Hello, and welcome to Own Your Retirement. My name is Albert Lalonde from Kaizen Financial Incorporated. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 586-752-7008 or visit us online at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com. That's Kaizen, Kaizen. And while at my website, click on the podcast page to check out our past shows and also to subscribe to our program on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Okay, so today we're talking about emergency funds, which are something that every household needs, but a surprising number don't have. And in today's economic climate, this conversation feels timelier than ever. So we're going to draw from a U.S. News and World Report article titled, "How Much Should You Save in an Emergency Fund?" Here's what financial experts say. This article is going to cover why these funds matter, how to size them correctly for your situation, and where to actually keep the money. Now, before we begin, I'm delighted to have my co-host, Tony Shore, back with me today because he's always my emergency fund. How are we doing, buddy?
Yeah, well, I don't know about an emergency fund, but I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well. Thanks
Good.
for having me on the show, Albert.
Of
And it
course.
is always good to see you. Have you been crazy busy? Have you been able to get away and get out on the lakes or the boat at all?
Yes. Oh, yes. I've been busy, but good busy. Still recovering from my shoulder, but
Yep.
was able to do some fishing this last
Oh,
weekend
good.
and get out in the waters with my nephew and my niece. So
That's
that was
nice.
all fun. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to go on vacation here in a few days for a week. So can't complain about that. So
Yeah, yeah. I know you're going to the grand gala for
yes,
Gradient Financial there with some other top advisors. That's awesome.
yes. So
That's gonna be a
should be
great
fun.
event. Yeah,
You
that's gonna
got
be
it.
a great event, and, chance for you to get away, but also to talk to some other advisors out there, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
You got
Well
it.
well, this is gonna be a great show because I think it's one of those foundational topics that
Hmm.
sometimes get overshadowed, but, this one really should come first because I don't think you can build anything lasting on a shaky foundation, I should say.
Right.
And I think for most households, an emergency fund is that foundation, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, Actually, the data from the article paints a nice, pretty clear picture. A Gallup survey conducted in April of this year and cited in the article found that 40% of American adults believe economic conditions are poor, and 73% say they're getting worse. So those are significant numbers, and they reflect something a lot of people are feeling in their everyday lives. On top of that, inflation is still running at an elevated level. Now, mind you, today the new reports came out from June and it is down a little bit, but still it's elevated from where the Feds want to be. The article also references the April 2026 Consumer Price Index that showed that all items rose 3.8% over the last 12 months. The gas prices surged more than 21% from February to March alone, which is a jarring number for anyone who drives to work. And then food, wow, away from home, like restaurants and takeout, that was up 3.6% year over year in April. Okay. So the article also notes that uneased about artificial intelligence is adding another layer, well, economic anxiety. At companies that are adopting AI, nearly a quarter of employees anticipate job elimination within 5 years, according to another Gallup poll. So, whether that concern ultimately plays out on that timeline is an open question, but the anxiety itself is real. And it's one more reason why having a financial cushion feels especially important right now, Tony.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. And when you layer all of that together, Albert, inflation, job uncertainty, higher costs, it highlights just how vulnerable people can be without that savings to fall back on.
Mhm.
What do the numbers actually show about where Americans stand on this right now?
Well, I would just say this, the numbers are concerning. While there's some good news in there, when you dig in, the picture can get a lot less reassuring. So, on the positive side, the article cites an April 2026 survey by the Harris poll, and they found that 78% of Americans say they have some cash set aside in a savings or emergency fund. Now, that sounds encouraging, but the follow up question is what matters the most. How much? Only 24% of those surveyed have saved 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses, which is what most financial advisors consider the standard target. 20% have less than 3 months worth, and 22% have no emergency savings at all. Then a separate 2026 survey done by US News found that 43% of Americans don't have $1,000 readily available. In fact, one third of them say they couldn't cover a single month of living expenses with their savings, and many others can't cover more than 3 months. So while most people have something saved, a large portion of the population is one car repair, one medical bill, or one unexpected job loss away from a genuine financial crisis.
Yeah, that's rough. And that's a striking gap between perception and reality, isn't it?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, people feel like they're saving, but the amount isn't enough to actually protect them if something goes wrong.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, and you have to understand the unpredictability piece is what really matters here. We like to think that we can see disruptions coming, but the reality is that we often can't. A job loss, let's say, rarely arrives with much warning. A medical emergency, by definition, isn't scheduled. See, and then you have major appliance breaking down, right? A roof needing repairs or a car that needs unexpected work. All are things that happen, and they tend to happen at the least convenient moments. And that's why we always think things happen in threes, right? And so this article frames an emergency fund not just as a savings goal, but as a protective measure. When you have the cushion in place, you're able to navigate those moments without going into debt or derailing everything else you've worked towards. And that peace of mind in reality has real value beyond just the dollars in the account.
Sure, but let's talk about the actual math of this. How does someone figure out what the right number is for them?
Well, the process starts with your essential monthly expenses. And I want to be specific here because this isn't about your total spending. It's about what you generally need to get through the month. We're talking about housing costs, utilities, food, transportation, healthcare, and insurance premiums, all the necessities. Now, not the streaming services, not the gym membership. You're thinking about canceling anyways. Think about that. These are just the core expenses that don't go away when times get tight. Now, once you have that number, you multiply it by the number of months you want to have covered. And the standard recommendation here is 3 to 6 months. And that's a reasonable target for most households where both partners are employed, income is relatively stable, and job security is solid.
Sure. Sure, but one size does not fit all, right? It's not gonna be the same for everybody.
Of course. And let's say if you're self employed, freelance, or working in a field where income can vary significantly from month to month. The guidance is to aim for 6 to 12 months there. A single income household faces similar vulnerability if that one income source disappears. So the buffer needs to be bigger to give you enough runway to recover. Then on the other end of the spectrum, if let's say you have a very strong job security, low fixed expenses, or significant other assets you could access in an emergency, then a 1 to 3 month target may be a reasonable starting point rather than a finish line.
Yeah. Yeah, and, so, um, I know you have some examples of what those targets actually look like in dollar terms because that's helpful for putting this into context, isn't it?
Yes, they really are. And let's just say, let's for a single employed person with no dependents and roughly, let's say, $1,600 in essential monthly expenses, a 3 month target will be around $4,800, and a 6 month target would be around $9,600. Now, for a couple where both partners work, no dependents, and $2,000, let's say, in monthly expenses, the targets are 6,000 and 12,000 respectively. Now, for a self-employed individual with no dependents and $3,000 in monthly essential costs, those numbers jump to 9,000 for 3 months and obviously 18,000 for six. See, these figures aren't meant to let's say intimidate. They're meant to give people something concrete to work towards. It's a goal. And the most important thing the article emphasizes is that you don't have to hit those numbers all at once, folks. Something is always better than nothing. Work your way through it and get there. All if let's say all you can manage right now is $25 a week, well, guess what? That's $1,300 over a year. That's a great
Well,
start, and a starting point matters.
yeah, yeah, just starting matters, even if
Mhm.
you start small and grow. Now, before we go any further, Albert, give your contact information. I know you love to hear from our listeners and viewers out there, and you're offering a no charge, no obligation consultation, right?
Of course. If today's conversation makes you think about where you stand financially, whether you have the right cushion in place, how your savings fit into your broader plan, give us a call here at 586 752 7008 or visit us online at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com. That's Kaizen, Kaizen, and set up your complimentary consultation. Remember, we're here to help you think through exactly these kinds of questions.
All right. So let's get into the saving strategies now.
Okay.
We know we need to save. I know there are some strategies because knowing the target is one thing, but actually building toward it is another, right?
It is. Well, the article now makes an important point that I think surprises people. You can save even when money is tight. Yes, it may not feel like it, but the strategy shifts based on what you have to work with. So let's say when income is strong, the trap is lifestyle creep. It's human nature to spend up to whatever your income is. So in good times, you have to be intentional. Don't wait to see what's left over at the end of the month. Automate the savings at the beginning. Decide on a set amount, have it transferred automatically to a dedicated account right after your paycheck hits, and treat it like any other bill. It doesn't give you a chance to talk yourself out of it. Basically, you should be paying yourself first.
Yeah. And when money is tighter, the approach is different, correct?
It is. In fact, start by building a realistic budget. Look at your net income, subtract the fixed costs you can't negotiate, like we said earlier, housing, utilities, and transportation, and then examine the discretionary spending. The article is candid that there is almost always some fluff, so to speak, to cut, at least temporarily. Maybe that's dining out less, pausing on a subscription, or making one fewer impulse purchase per week. Even small amounts add up. So remember, the article cites an example of putting away $25 a week when money is tight. That might feel trivial, but that's $1,300 a year, and it builds the habit of saving, which matters just as much as the balance.
Yeah. And for me, the automation piece really is the key to making this stick, right?
Yes.
Making the regular contribution stick, automate it, do it first before you pay your bills or do anything. Put money into the emergency fund.
Yes.
I think that's a good one. What other strategies do you have for us?
Well, here's a few worth highlighting. You have one is what the article calls finding a saving buddy,
Hmm.
and which is simply someone in your circle who's always working towards a savings goal where you can share strategies, talk through obstacles, and keep each other accountable. It sounds simple, but having someone else invested in your progress actually changes the dynamic. And then another tip is to monitor your fund quarterly rather than constantly. If you're watching the balance go up in small daily increments, it can feel discouraging. Checking in once a quarter, though, lets you see meaningful growth, and then you stay motivated.
So I know you've also suggested in the past, or I've heard in the past anyway, that um, uh, maybe you could give your emergency fund a bit of a jump start with a temporary income source, right? Or
Yeah, I mean,
temporary job.
you could. A lot of people do that. That might mean a short term, let's say, side gig like delivery work or freelancing or dog walking, and committing all those earnings directly to the emergency account until you
Sure.
hit a threshold. See, the idea is to treat it as a time limited push, not a permanent lifestyle change. And then another thing to note is that when you get a bonus, let's say, or a tax refund, or let's say unexpected money, don't spend all of it. Split it. Have some fun with part of it, but send the rest straight to the emergency fund. You won't miss money you didn't have in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good guidance. And you went over a lot of great saving strategies there. Now, let's shift to where this money should actually live because it
Yes.
sounds like having it in the wrong account or the wrong place could cost you, correct?
Oh, yes, it can. In fact, in a couple of different ways. So, the first is putting emergency savings somewhere too inaccessible. So, what I mean by that, if you have to wait a week to get your money, or if there are significant penalties for taking it out, that defeats the purpose. An emergency doesn't wait for your funds to clear. The second mistake is putting emergency savings somewhere too volatile, or on the other end, somewhere that earns almost nothing when you could be doing better.
Sure. So, what are some options?
Well, thankfully, there are several, Tony. A basic savings account is the simplest starting point. It's easy to set up, there's no volatility, it's FDIC insured, and the funds are immediately accessible. The downside is that the interest rates on traditional savings accounts are minimal and may not keep pace with inflation. So, a high yield savings account solves the interest rate problem. You'll earn significantly more than a standard savings account while still maintaining FDIC protection and penalty free access. The trade off is that transfers probably can take 1 to 3 business days. So it's not quite as instant as, let's say, a checking account, but for most emergencies, a couple of days is workable. And then you have a money market account, which is another solid option. It typically offers better rates than a regular savings account and carries FDIC insurance. Some accounts limit the number of transactions per month, so it's worth making sure you check on those terms.
Okay. And what about some of the options that might lean a little more toward the investment side?
Well, the article did cover those as well, and there are a few worth, I would say, knowing about with some important caveats. So, money market mutual funds, which are different from bank money market accounts, offer competitive rates and are generally very safe. But they're not FDIC insured, though. And like any fund, the interest rate can drop if the Federal Reserve cuts rates. Now, short term treasury bills or notes are another option. They're backed by the US government, carry very low risk, and typically pay more than a traditional savings account. The downside is that it can take a few days to sell them. And if you sell before maturity, you could lose some money.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't wanna do that.
No.
And I know this isn't something you always recommend, but some people might consider, CDs or certificates of deposit, right?
Yeah, I mean, certificates of deposits are decent, especially if you stay with the 3 or 6 month CDs. That can work
Sure.
for, let's say, a portion of your emergency fund if you build what sometimes we call a CD ladder, okay, where different portions mature at different intervals in the year. The higher interest rates comes with the catch, though. If you break the term early, you'll pay a penalty. Now, the key principle across all of, let's say, these is that emergency savings need to be accessible without major friction or risk of loss. A
Mm.
little interest is great, but the primary job of these funds is to be there when you need the funds. And one thing the article specifically flags is that a cryptocurrency account isn't where you park your emergency fund, guys. So remember that. The potential upside is real, but so is the potential for rapid loss. And that's not a risk worth taking when it comes to the money you may need, like paying rent.
Yeah. Well, and I keep coming back to the fact that it sounds like an emergency fund isn't really about fear, it's about freedom. I mean, when you have
Yes.
that cushion, you have options.
Yes.
When you don't have that cushion or don't have the emergency fund, every unexpected event becomes a crisis, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to frame that, Tony. And I'd add that the peace of mind has value that doesn't even show up in any spreadsheet. And when you know the money is there, gosh, you carry less financial anxiety day to day, which makes your life healthier. You can make better career decisions, family decisions, and financial decisions from a position of stability rather than desperation. And then giving people choices is what financial planning is ultimately about. And an emergency fund is the first choice that makes all the other choices possible. A financial service professional can help you guys figure out the right target for your situation, where to keep those funds, and how they fit into the bigger picture of your complete financial life.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And just to recap, this is so important. You've went over so much. You want to find your target, figure out your essential monthly expenses. A lot of people, it's 3 to 12 months, depending on your situation. worth of expenses, and you want to build the fund and save properly, there are a lot of strategies you went over and where to keep that money. So this is good. What do you have for us before we go? We're almost out of time here. I know our listeners and viewers might have more questions.
Yes. The bottom line is simply this, guys. If you don't have an emergency fund in place, starting today, even with the small amount, is better than waiting for the perfect moment, because the perfect moment is usually right before the unexpected happens. And by then, it's too late.
Yeah.
So, if you'd like to walk through or talk through where you stand or how an emergency fund fits into your overall financial picture, give us a call here at 586-752-7008 or visit us online at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com, Kaizen, Kaizen, and schedule your complimentary consultation. Remember, it's our goal to help you own your retirement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Albert. And listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Own Your Retirement with our host, Albert Lalonde.
Take care.